everybody, welcome. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put It Together. Welcome to the show. This is our regular Saturday show, so thank you for joining us. Remember, we're here every Saturday morning at noon Pacific Standard Time, 3 Eastern for Put It Together and some great conversations. Hope you join us for the whole hour. For those of you watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, thank you so much for watching. If you want to share this on your page so that other folks can watch it, that'd be really cool. For those of you watching on YouTube, if you scroll down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll let other folks know. It'll let you know the next time we have shows. Remember, we got shows here pretty much every day of the week. On Mondays, you can catch our horoscopes. On Wednesdays, Christian and Daniel. Fridays, the Card Devote. Saturdays, Put It Together. And then once in a while, we sneak in some shows there during the week. So make sure that you're following us so you get notified. On today's show, I have a very special person. She's a really dear friend of mine. She's one of those adopted sisters that we all have. Her name is Madelynn Dorsey. She's a business tax consultant with Paradigm Tax Group. Madelynn's goals are to not allow her medical issues to derail her from living and enjoying life, to hopefully have raised children who are courteous, show love and compassion to their fellow man, find happiness in life wherever they may be. Madelyn's aspirations are to always be a true friend, great wife, and a loving and caring mother. Her personal achievements include that her husband and she have been able to successfully blend their families where both children feel loved and supported equally by both, and that their children truly see each other as siblings and not just step siblings. Business achievements include that she has been able to successfully change career paths later in life and has moved up quickly in her new career. A quirky fact about Madelynn is that she loves pickles. She eats them with almost everything. She particularly loves having pickles with popcorn and chips and salsa, and I can attest to that last part. With nothing more, let me bring her in. Madelynn, hi.
Hi, how are you guys?
How are you doing?
I am well. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm
Well,
excited.
thank you for being here. For those of you that always like to hear the stories of how I know my guest, Madelynn and I go way back. Uh, this is a true story. I'm gonna totally out myself on this story, but it's true. For those of you that have been following me know that I dealt with drugs and alcohol for a long time. So I met Madelynn back in like 2005, maybe 2006, por
Hmm.
ahí.
Yes.
And she's really good friends, best friends with who became my boss, became a friend of mine. And we're not going to say any names or where I worked or anything, but I ended up working at a restaurant for this particular friend. And she says she came in to eat several times. I was such an addict that I don't remember her coming in.
Or I
But
just didn't make a good impression.
I was like, I was like, you're not, I don't know who you are, lady. And, but then when I got sober, we ended up to go celebrate a birthday party. And that was the first time that I have like a recognition of you. And mostly because there's a photo of us dancing.
Yes.
That's what we said. So there's proof. I cannot deny that I met you that night. And I still remember we went. I still remember. See that I remember. We went to this place called Luna's. They
Hmm.
sold tapas, and that's we went.
Hmm.
And I was fresh out of rehab because I remember being like, it was a lot of wine. I'm like, I don't drink. Bien indignant at the audacity. But anyway, so we've been friends for a long time, and then I moved to California, and then shortly after you moved,
I moved too. Yeah.
and I followed you on Facebook, and that's why I discovered that you were in California. Like, and at that time, you were living in
San Jose.
San Jose, and
Hmm.
I was like, I'm coming to San Jose for work, and then we reconnected, and I have not been able to get rid of you ever since.
That is true. That is true. All true. He's not lying, folks. Not lying, folks, at all. But yeah, that was good, and the reconnection was fantastic. Being in California and just continuing the family slash friendship line. So that was fun.
And it's been. I feel like the universe made it so that like I was in my sobriety now and able to be connected to you because we've been through a lot. One of the most special things about Madelynn that I hold very deep in my heart is that she was here in Laguna Beach the last day of my chemo when I was going through cancer. And for those of you that follow me, I was diagnosed with anal cancer on Cinco de Mayo, which is coming up, my seventh year anniversary. And my last day of chemo was on 4th of July of 2015. And Madeline came and spent that weekend. It was a weekend.
Yes.
And you were here with us that last day. It was a Saturday. And you were there with us last Saturday. So it was very
Yes.
special.
Yes. No, it's very special memory for me too. Emotional, but elation is a whole lot of emotion going on. But it was. Thank you for letting me partake in that. I really.
My pleasure. And
It's a
then I
special.
had,
I hold it holds a special place in my heart as well.
oh, well, thank you. And so now, for those of you watching, every 4th of July, when you're grilling hot dogs and popping fireworks, you think about my anal cancer on my butt. So you're welcome. You're welcome for that.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
but I've been wanting to have you on my show ever since I've had a show. I've always been an admirer of you and your tenacity and your strong will, and we're very similar in the way that we work and the way that we think about professionalism and family and stuff. Um, but your story has always impressed me. So anyway, I'm going to shut up now so you can talk. So Madeline Dorsey, tell us how you put it together.
Oh gosh. Well, long story short, because it is a long story.
We have an
um,
hour.
so
Don't worry.
yeah, I know, right? I moved from Houston to California, so San Jose. I currently live in Santa Clara, which is like a suburb outside of San Jose, so North California. Um, in 2008 and 2009, sorry, 2009, and I moved out here because I was getting married, and so from there, we my husband has a son and I have a daughter, so we call ourselves the mini Brady Bunch. So we combined our homes and our families, and the rest is history. We throughout that, life itself, the home life was challenging, blending families was challenging, um, mainly because you're kind of set in your ways as parents, and then too as individuals. We were both in our mid 30s when we got married, so you kind of you have your own set ways and how you handle your children, and so combining that, well, it was a big learning curve for us, a huge learning curve. I'm not going to say a big, but a huge learning curve, and how we parent our children and how we also handle our spouse's child, and first getting to build a relationship with that child and having them trust you, and then not wanting to overstep the other parent's boundaries. For instance, like with my son, his mother, I never wanted to step on her toes. Same thing with Anthony, but we wanted to make sure that within our family life that our kids knew that we were a family and we're going to love each other. There's no difference of, no, that's my son, or no, that's my daughter, that kind of language in our home. And so it took some time, because it's hard when you've been like the main disciplinarian and provider, and then someone steps in, and then if the other child steps out of line, or you want to make them clean or some, it feels weird as a parent. Like, for instance, my husband be like, Inara, you need to stop, or get your elbows off the table and sit straight, and be like, are you yelling at my daughter like that? Those are things like you have to like get used to, and not like take offense to. It's almost like if a stranger was saying, but they're not your stranger. You married this person and you wanted to build a life together. So those were like some examples of the challenges and stuff like that we had to learn to deal with. And then just again too, just having children. They're 6 years apart. There is a boy and a girl. Their lives, what motivates them, what drives them, and then too, wanting to raise good people. That's the biggest thing for us, is that I want them to be successful, but to me, that's not everything. I want them to be happy in their lives, and I want them to be good people to others, to the world, to provide to give something. Even if it's just their spirit and their aura and their way of speaking and making people feel loved and appreciated. That's really what I want for them. And so, we've tried to keep that in mind. And then, of course, then you have your jobs, and then having to incorporate that, making it work. We don't have family around. We're kind of away from everybody, which is a strange thing for Latinos. Like usually have everybody around and have this whole system that helps you. And so I think for us it was really a strength. At first we didn't see it that way, but it was because then we learned to lean on each other. We learned to um, deal with problems and just between ourselves, my husband and I and the family, instead of like dragging in other family members or dropping off the kids here and there. We had to learn to really figure out, okay, who do we trust, what our little circle of friends would be, and who we trusted with our children, and having date nights, all those things, and then you have, like I said, with jobs and who's going to be the one to pick up the kids, who's going to take off when the kids are sick, things like that, and late
There's a
night.
lot of coordinating.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And especially, I mean, I know, for me, I feel like it's a little challenging when or far more challenging when you blend families. So as far as like if you're together, you're married, and then you start a family, you kind of had those conversations. Not to say we didn't have conversations, but it's different when you're just kind of thrown to the lions. At least when you start off together and your kids are from each other, you're a little more balanced. But then to find that balance when you're starting two different, circles and combining them, there's a lot of turbulence in that, and working out, and yeah, balancing life, and just learning to appreciate, this style of life that you
Right.
chose, and saying, hey, we can make it work. There's
Well, can I go back and start
sure.
with that? Just because we moved from Texas, and I see your Texas
Oh yeah,
behind there. Yeah,
of course.
of course. Claro. The first off, like, and I'm gonna throw in a little bit of what I know, just like getting married and then moving to California. Like,
Oh
boom.
yeah,
Like, there's no like let's hang out with the family for a while. I
yeah.
mean, you uprooted, not just not just changed cities and states, but married and moved over. That's a
Yep.
big. How was the adjustment? Because I know a lot of people that do that. How was that for you to just completely leave Texas behind?
You know what, Danny? It was really tough, and that took a lot of mental, spiritual preparation. Because yes, I am close to my family, and then my immediate family, my parents, my brothers. Because I wasn't married at the time at my with my daughter's father. I was a single parent, so my parents helped me out, and so then having, building this, and to boot, we had a long distance relationship. So it wasn't like we knew the everydays of each other. We only knew
Wow.
conversationally. And we did, have long conversations, spoke and visit each other. And we actually took almost a year before we even introduced our children to each other, till we knew this is what we wanted to do, because that's a huge change. But moving over, telling my parents had met him and everything, and then finally met my son. And um, but when it came to, okay, we're packing and we're leaving, it was really hard because, my daughter was 5, and now I am taking her away from everything she knows and is familiar with. I'm taking myself away from everything I know, all my friends, all my family, everybody I leaned on. I'm taking them away from, we're entering this new venture completely blind. Like, okay, we're in it to win it. Let's do it. And so as a mother, I felt a little guilty about it, because I'm like, I'm bringing my daughter into a situation I don't even know what I'm kind of getting into. You know what I mean? I'm hoping for the best. I'm praying for the best, but I don't even know. And it was hard. It was hard. The first few holidays, like my family's huge, and we celebrate everything. First birthdays away, first Thanksgiving, that was huge. Like I cried all Thanksgiving because we're FaceTiming and we're away. And then there were nights that my daughter would cry. What, I want to go back where grandma. Why are we here? Like, and that was hard as a parent to take. And then the same token too, like also feeling sad for my husband because he's like, there were times where he felt, am I not enough? Are we not enough? Me and my son enough to make you guys happy here? Did we do the right? Oh, then we question, did we do the right thing? And that's a scary thing. Again,
Because
one of those
people
humps
don't
to get over.
consider, like in your case, people may not consider that like one of you had to, like there was no compromise. Like one of you had to give up
Right,
your space because either he uprooted and maybe took his son with him to Texas, or
right.
he, how body, mind, and spirit. How did you prepare for all that?
Well, one, at least the decision making for me coming was because I have full custody of my daughter. My daughter's father is really not involved in her life, so then that was going to be the easier choice because my husband, he had shared custody with his son, so he couldn't leave. So again, those were in the beginning of our relationship. Those were conversations we had to have before we even knew, like, we wanted to delve deeper into things, because that's obviously a significant part of our lives as our children. um, but once we were like, okay, yeah, we want to build this relationship. We want it was hard. Like I said, it was extremely hard. It was hard for me because I thought, one, on one side you're weighing the positive and negatives. On one side you're like, hey, I want my daughter to have a family, to have a father figure and a mother figure, or whether it's two mothers or two fathers. But I wanted her to have that stability. And I wanted her to have, a male figure, even though she had it within my dad and my parents. But I wanted her, for lack of a better word, like to have what I had. Both my parents are still together, and to have that unity and see
Well,
I know, to see them working together, even when there's disputes, seeing that as a child, my parents working that out and seeing the ups and downs is beneficial. It helps you in the long run. And I wanted that for her. And I know that my husband wanted the same for our son. So I think that's what was really the driving force of, we're going to make this work, and we're going to do our damnedest, whatever it takes to make that work. But it did take a lot of mental and spiritual preparation. I prayed a lot about it. Like I said, I was leaving everything that I knew, my friends, and I thought, how am I going to, my job, people that respected me, I'm going, even though I was staying with the same company, these are people I didn't know. I didn't build a relationship with. They don't know how hard I work. I have to come. I'm proving myself in almost every aspect of life by making this change. And that's what mentally I had to prepare myself for. I was like, okay, not only am I starting a new marriage, you know, I'm going to be living with a person that I know I chose and I love, but I actually know nothing about when it comes to living situations. Like, you
it's
don't
those,
know.
yes.
Like,
You
I
don't
didn't know he
know
leaves his
that.
socks on the floor, a trail when he walks in. Like, you don't know those things about each other. So I'm learning that. I'm learning how to be a wife. I'm learning a city. Even like getting to know roads. Those are silly things that you don't even think of till you're put in that situation. And it was like now, and also too, my daughter, she was in a Montessori program back in Texas, and so coming here, I had to find that information, find out what schools am I going to put her in? Am I going to go private? Am I going to go public? I didn't even know the area, so I didn't even know if the school district we were living in was good. Like I knew nothing. I was like starting from scratch.
People,
And then
if you watch The Amazing Race, there's nothing like The Amazing Race when you move to a new city and you're trying to find everything. Because I know when I moved to California, even with the GPS, I would get lost. And I'm like,
yes,
this is the Amazing Race, people. So yeah, I'm curious, and I'm so glad that you're so open and you're talking. But
I think.
so, how do you get? Can you tell us about the first encounter when the kids meet and how that goes?
Well, so so the first encounter, so how it worked first was so mainly when the kids met or when we met the kids.
Well, let's
Okay.
yes and both.
So we did first me meeting Darius, which is my son. So I flew out to California, and I was sweating. I was so nervous, even though I'm meeting a 7 year old for Christ, or an 8 year old at the time. And I was like, oh my God, what? I'm so nervous. Like, what is this kid gonna think of me? Like, is he gonna like me? And then like then too, you're like, they have their mom, and you don't want to like, I'm taking over that spot. No, no. Oh my God. Oh, so we met, and so what we bonded over was cheesecake. I found out he loved cheesecake, and I was like, oh, well, order it, baby. Get the biggest piece. And he stuffed his face, but the funny thing is, my son, he's like my husband. He's very reserved, very quiet. He's me, I'm loud and rambunctious, and my daughter's the same way. So it was like pulling teeth to get him to talk to me. He's like, and then you're talking about, a middle schooler or like a fifth grader, talking to like a complete stranger. He's like, I don't even know who you are. Why are you talking to me? That kind. Then my daughter, then Anthony met my daughter. He came to Texas, and her and I were like attached at the hip. That's my ride or die, my little girl. And she was like the complete opposite, like teddy bear, smothering him, kissing him, da 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 da. Yeah, yeah. And he took her to the mall, and she wanted to get me something. I mean, they even went to Build a Bear and made me a bear, like complete opposite experience. So he was like smitten, and she was just like, "Oh, cool. There's another person in my life that's taking me places," But then when we brought them together, Anar and I came out, and it was just like it, it was funny. They really took to each other right away. It was like nothing. It was just like, oh, da, 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 da. And then, we explained to them that, hey, we're gonna be moving out here. Like had that conversation, and for my daughter, she was just kind of like, okay, whatever. It was more like our son that understood. He was older. Our daughter was 4 at the time, so she was like, oh, okay, whatever. But our son was more like, oh, so you're moving over here, and that's gonna be my sister, and so am I still gonna? And for him, it was kind of scary because he thought that maybe like he wasn't gonna be able to come over in the beginning. He was like, "So am I still coming to see my dad?" I'm like, of course you are. This is your home's the way they are. It's staying the same. We're just added people there. It's just more love to go around. You know what I mean? More people that are gonna love you. And you're gonna have a sister now, and so for him, it was hard to read him too, what he was really thinking. But I was surprised when he is like, "So am I gonna be able to come to my dad's house?" I'm like, "Of course." Like I was like, "Oh my God, did I make that impression that he's not allowed to
Now,
come over?"
let me ask, because I've always wondered. I wonder a lot of things. This is a great time to ask you a question. Um, was that the terminology when you introduced him? Said this is your sister, not stepsister. Did I lose you? Oh, I think we lost her. Are you there? Hello?
I'm so sorry. I think things are a little jumbled. I didn't hear the question. I think
There you
we're
go.
frozen.
It froze. You froze a little, but I think you're back now.
I'm so sorry. I don't
Hello?
know if
Can you
I
hear me? Okay.
can you hear
Hello?
me okay?
You're
Can you hear
you're.
me okay? So I apologize. I didn't. Is it my frequency? I'm sorry.
I
Let me
think you're
double check it.
freezing.
Make sure.
You're. I think you're back again.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard the question, but I was asking because you said when you introduced them, you said
Mhm.
this is she's gonna be your sister. Is that the
Mhm.
terminology you used? Was it a conscious decision to not put the word step in
Yes, yes, we didn't want to have that word, like the step thing in there. Like this is like when I think back, like I don't really know what we said as far as addressing me and how she was going to address Anthony, but we didn't put the step in there. We're just like, we're going to be, a family. I'm not taking over your mom, and I did explain to him like you can call me whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to call me a different name or just by my name, whatever feels comfortable to you. Like we wanted to make sure he was comfortable. As far as my daughter is concerned, you know, she knew daddy as her daddy. So then on her, oddly enough, on her own, because she has this little bear that she calls Cody Bear when she was little. Um, so she, like, out of the blue, decided to name him Papa Bear. She's like, I'm gonna call him Papa Bear. Okay, so that was like, okay, well, that one's good for
Easy.
the books, yeah. And then for her, like, she didn't really understand the concept of step. She was too young, so she's like, oh, that's my brother. Okay, cool. Like, she didn't. For her, she didn't know any different. It was more working towards on our son because he was aware of things. He was older, so for him, it's like, this is going to be your sister, and you guys are going to rely on each other and learn to lean on each other. And then we made the conscious decision as well that we wanted them to share a room together, and that took a little convincing with my son's real mom. What? But then, like, no, we want them to get to know. We want them to be like brother and sister, like be goofy at night, like jumping on their beds, do something, learn to clean their room together, putting things up, working together on things. So that was it seems odd when I tell people that. They're like, you had them share rooms. Like, yeah, because we didn't want them to be separated. We wanted them to learn to be together. And because, we weren't worried about, things that, people might worry about, like touchy feely things or inappropriate things. We weren't concerned about that. We're like your brother and sister and you're going to help each other out. And they did. And it worked to, oh, thank God it worked the way we wanted it to work. Like it really did bond them because then they played together, you know, they would stay awake together when they were supposed to be asleep, it was those kind of things. So, you know,
What you want brother and sisters to do. Like the things
yes,
that you
exactly.
expect them to misbehave a little bit together. You expect them
Yeah,
to cover for each other. You
to
expect
cover for
them,
each other. Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Yes,
Which
exactly.
sometimes with real siblings we forget that not everybody knows how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Now, for the folks that are watching who may be starting the process of blending a family, what's one thing that you wish you had done differently?
I wish, at least for me, I wish I would have been, and I'm going to say this without getting teary eyed. I wish I would have been more affectionate with my stepson, and not because I'm not an affectionate person, but Anthony kind of prepared me that Darius is really not a touchy feely person. He rarely hugs his mom, and he did say, like, his mom's not very, the other side of his family is not very touchy feely, like hugging, kissing, like showing a lot of that type of physical affection. So because he told me that, and then I had met, Darius's mom and stuff like that, I was like, I kind of used that as my guide because again, like I never wanted him to feel uncomfortable. But now in retrospect, I wish I would have been that way because sometimes it makes me think, and he has said things now that he's older, he's in his mid 20s, and he has said, I used to get jealous that, you would like hug and kiss Anara and play with her and roll with her. But he's like, I wish y'all would have done that more with me. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, and I had to, like, it was a hard conversation. I had to tell him, let me explain why. It's not because I didn't love you. I loved you very much. And I wanted to do those things with you. I wanted to be like, but you were also at like a middle schooler's age. You were a young boy. Like you were not having even your dad you didn't even want to hug your dad, much less like, why would I think you wanted me to smother you? I said, so I was really trying to be careful that I didn't overstep your mom's boundaries as mom. And I didn't want you to feel like I was too much telling you what to do or making you feel a certain way. Like it's a weird, strange balance. And like you're probably listening to me thinking, well, that seems like normal, like you would hug a kid and stuff. But when you're in a situation and you're really trying to think about things and make the right decisions, it's a weird balance. It's such a
It's
when you think
interesting
back, yeah, like, oh God, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done this differently.
because it sounds like your motherly instinct was to be a mom.
Yes,
'Cause you're a great mom. You're a great mom. So,
thank
uh,
you.
and for those of you, I know all the people involved in this conversation. I know them all. I know her daughter very well. Just God, I don't know, I like her, but we have a love hate relationship. But your motherly instinct was to be a mom. Like I want to
Yes,
be a mom to this kid just because he's
yes,
part of my circle. He's part of my ripple of people.
right,
But then the influence of other people stopped you from going in that direction. So I think for people listening or watching that are like, hey, I'm about to start blending our families. For the moms and even the dads, trust your instinct as a parent.
right. Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, I would definitely say that. And then again, I think what's important is just really having the conversation with your spouse. Like, okay, I feel like this. What do you think? Or I want to do this. What do you think? How do you think this child is going to receive that? I think, not to say we didn't have conversations, but I think once we were already married together, moved in, we didn't have them as much. We didn't have those conversations as often as far as like, well, how do you think he or she's going to receive that? It was just more, I think we were so focused on we want them to understand that we're parenting equally and this is our family and this is how it's going to be. We're not taking sides, per se. I think that's what we were probably focusing on too much at
Gotcha.
times, that we forgot to have those conversations of like, hey, how does he really feel towards me, or how should I address him in this situation? And again, it's a learning curve, and for those people out there that are considering blending their families together, or and they're in the beginning stages, I would really highly recommend that, to have those, to be open and have those conversations, and also have the tough conversations of discipline. How are we going to discipline these kids? And when we're in disagreement on the discipline, how do you back off from that and not let the kid know that the two parents are at odds with the disciplining? You know what I mean? Because that's tricky too. For instance, with our son, like there was a point where he was having trouble with grades and stuff like that, and he played sports. And for me, I'm a huge academic person. I also played sports too, but to me, it's like school's first. Where my husband's the opposite. So I would tell my husband, well, you can't play when you don't pass, and there's a lesson he has to learn. And my husband's like, well, no, I don't want to take the only thing that he enjoys in life away from him. We'll just tutor him. And so we were at odds with that. And then on the flip side, too, when it came to our daughter, we had that same type of conversation again. And it was like, well, no, she's going to miss out on this game because she didn't do what she was supposed to do. And she's going to go to the game. She's going to sit there and explain to her teammates, hey, I didn't pass this, and this is why I'm not participating.
I guess that works. You kind of brought up the question is like, how have you managed the challenges with your son? Did you feel like a third wheel in the times of stress and disorder?
Oh, yes, very much so. Third, yeah. And again, that is a huge challenge when you're blending families, because you do feel like the third wheel. You do feel like what you're saying is not really being heard, because the two other parents are like, well, no, this is our son and we're going to make this decision together, and they're separated. So they have, Anthony and, Darius's mother they had to have those conversations. And a lot of times I wasn't involved in those conversations. And respectfully, I understood it. I understood it. And like, to what you said earlier about what would I change, I would I would change in probably in the sense that I would have probably stressed more to my husband, you know what? Maybe I think I do need to be part of these conversations. I think I do need to be, not because I want to feel like we're going against what his mom wants, or just for another perspective, because in the end, all three of us are raising this kid, you know? So where the difference was with my daughter, because my daughter's father wasn't involved, it wasn't as stressful. it just automatically came into the form that Anara was like, okay, well, he's like my dad and or my extra dad, and I have to listen to him, just like he's my brother's dad. And she's always seen it. I mean, Darius as her brother, so for her it was a different. Her path was different, and then too because Darius in the beginning lived with his mom, and then he would come every weekend to our house. So that was another different roller coaster dynamic of building relationships where my daughter was in the house all the time with Anthony. So they bonded so much quicker than my son and I did.
Gotcha.
So
So
again, those are
that's
conversations I
really
think
good
people
information.
have. I'm sorry.
That's really good information for people who are watching this and going, okay, we're about to blend our families. How do we make it work? Because even if he had his own room when he came to visit you,
Hmm.
I would imagine that as a kid you're like, well, I'm just visiting for the weekend. I don't live here.
Right.
So
Yes.
do I have to follow the rules of the house if I'm just a guest per se?
Right. And that was to Anthony's benefit. That was his point exactly because his parents separated when he was young. So he was building off of that block of yeah, I would go here and it was like I really didn't belong. I'd come back home and but I didn't belong here either because he'd go back home with his mom and he's like, I'm a boy, like you don't understand what I'm talking about, type of thing. So that's the premise he was coming from is I don't want my son to feel like you're the evil stepmom and he when he comes here all he's supposed to do is clean the weekend and then so those were conversations and I'd be like, well no, this is his house and I'm going to treat him the same as Anar and be like, hey, this is our house. We all take care of it together. We all put in our just dues to make this work. Like, yeah, you are going to fix your bed. You are going to, help wash dishes after we eat. You are going to clear the table or you are going to sweep. Anar is going to dust. And that was so hard because he was coming from the perspective of no, you're the evil stepmom, and I don't want him to see you that way because that's how I felt when I went to my other parents' house with my stepmom. He's like, and he clearly sees her today as his stepmom, not just another person that. Not that he doesn't know she loves him, but you know what I'm saying. There was a
Yeah,
distinction there.
because
So
this follows to this question too. It's like, how do you draw your own personal lines? Like, how? Because just as much as you want to be included, I'm sure that
mhm.
there's times you're like, okay, I don't need to be part of this. Like, I need to be stuck.
Yeah, no, that. Yeah, that's hard too. That's really oh god, it's hard. Like I said, you're constantly learning and trying to figure out what is the best approach. Um, Times where I had to draw the line and say no. I think this is something that I shouldn't be involved in. It was a time in my son's life where things were going on, and emotional things, and not that I didn't want to be a part of it, but he was having struggles, and so I thought, I maybe this is not the point where I should be involved, per se. And so Anthony wanted me to, but he respected it as well. He's like, yeah, you're right. We need to come together as me and his mom figure this out. And then so how we did it then was they had their conversation at his mom's house. They talked it out, and then we all met together. So that's been the one strength for us is that we um, always included like his mom's family or did things with them. So like for instance, the first Mother's Day we were out, we made a conscious decision. I wanted to be, friends with Darius' mom because I'm watching her kid. I want her to feel comfortable with me. So we made the conscious decision like, hey, are you cool if we have Mother's Day together? And that really, to this day, like he still talks about that. He's like, it really made me happy that I could spend Mother's Day with both of y'all. Same thing too. Father's Day, we did it. We did it with, his grandparents came over, Raina came over, and same thing with birthdays. So in the beginning, we really made the conscious effort to do things together. So at least for Darius's sake, he wouldn't feel so much of this house, that house, you know, that,
That's a really good
oh,
idea. I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that. that you're not putting the kids in a position to have to choose.
Right. Yes.
Because who wants that as a kid? Like
Right.
basically, you ask like, who do you love the best, and
Yeah.
who do you love more? And as Latinos, we're like, ¿Cómo que vas a ir para allá? Like, how
Yeah.
dare
Exactly.
you? Hmm.
Exactly. Uh,
You know, comment here. Blended families are working together, and blended families are working together is key. I
it
yes.
it really is. It really if you can make that happen, I obviously stress it to the 100th degree, because there are going to be times where the spouses or the ex-spouses don't get along. For instance, like if Anthony and Raina didn't get along, which you might find that in a lot of situations, I think that's when, as adults, you have to come together and say, "Hey, we need to put our differences aside for the health, developmental health of this child, to make them always feel like, hey, we're a team, even though we're not together. We're a team." And I'm very grateful to Darius's mom that she was on the same page with that. Because I was an outsider in the beginning, and to have to, or I don't want to, like I said, infringe on that. So I'm very grateful to her that she felt comfortable with me, that she was like, yeah, let's do that together. I think maybe too, because she's a teacher, so she understood. Maybe her perspective was different, and so, like, for Darius's football games, we were all there. His grandma, and so to this day, like I said, we've celebrated things, together, and I'm very glad we made that decision for the
Oh yeah,
family.
something you brought up at the beginning. And by the way, we're almost at 20 minute till mark.
Um,
We passed the 20-minute mark. But something that we kind of talked on a little bit at the beginning, but I want to make sure that we highlight it.
mhm,
Um, Being Latinos and blending like cultural norm. I mean, culture, social norms,
mhm.
religion. How did how did you bring all that? Like, how
Oh,
did you know what to bring in and what to leave out? Because como Latinos, we want to, let's face it, como Latinos, we want to impose. Like,
yes,
here's our traditions, here's our religious beliefs, and here's how
right,
we, the hierarchy. Orale. And
right.
not everybody falls. How did you manage that?
Yeah, that's funny that you say. Again, open conversations. I was very spiritual person. I went to church every Sunday, this and that, and so that was another thing. I had to find a church and stuff that went out of here. So then I said to Anthony, because at the time, my husband was an atheist. He was not a believer. And so that was a challenge. So anyway, so then I just said, hey, you know, I'm going to be going to church on Sunday, and I'm dragging Anara with me. And I said, but, we had always talk about that. He would join in things that were important to me. So I said, for Christmas and stuff like that, or Easter, I would like for us to go to church together. How do you feel about that? And he was like, okay, yeah. And I said, okay, well, now I need to ask Raina, how does she feel about that? So, sorry, I shouldn't have said her name, but, Darius's mother. And so we had the conversation. Like, we went over her house, and I said, hey, I've been speaking to Anthony about this. I don't know what your religious preferences are, anything like that, but there's this church I've been going to, and I would like for us as families to go. And she's like, she, even though she was born Catholic, like, she wasn't a practicing Catholic, so she didn't go to church or anything like that. And she's like, well, she's like, how about this? She's like, what if I let me go to your church first, and then I'll tell you if it's okay that if you include my son in that. And I thought that was fair. And again, I worried, because I was like, okay, I don't want him, again, I didn't want him to feel left out, like we're doing something without him. But at the same time, I have to respect his mom and his dad's wishes when it comes to that. So,
Because my brain is going, it's okay if nobody wants to go, but Jesus is watching.
yeah.
Diosito te está viendo. So, pero si no quieres ir, no vayas.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, no, I mean, I was like, okay, we're going. So, but then it was like, it was cool, because she went to a service. She was like, okay, that's cool. Da, da, da. And then, so the first time we went, she came too. So it was like, okay, we made this work. That's cool. That works. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, it's there's all those things that you don't even you think you have covered and you haven't until you reach that moment. And so when you the best advice I could give is when you do hit those moments, like for instance church, or for instance, I don't know, like you catch your kid
Well,
smoking, or like you
and there's all the
how
other
we're going
little
to handle that.
details. There's the like, I remember dating somebody that we ended up living together for a little bit,
Hmm.
and it wasn't until we lived together that I realized that he really didn't use the stove to cook. Like, he didn't like the smell of food in his house. I just thought we always ordered in because we didn't want to cook. Until I had to live with him for a little bit. I'm like, so you really don't use your stove at all? Like, how is that? How do you live? You know what I mean? It's like you don't know
Yeah,
until you're there. Because you can be on the phone all romantic. I love you too. When we live together, I'm
yeah,
gonna cook for you every day, and then you move in, you're like, that's not gonna happen. I just have an hour in traffic. Like I'm not coming home to cook. Is that right? I mean, does that make sense?
and I think I lost you for a second. I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Christian. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? I lost her for a little bit for everybody. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. She is adjusting her. For everybody watching, in case you missed the entrance, we're talking to. Oh, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
And mute.
There
Hello?
you go. Yeah,
There
you're
we go.
muted. Gotcha.
Sorry about that.
I just saw the little thing, and
Me-
when people mute themselves, I can't unmute them. So I was like, fine, si ya no quieres hablar, pues ya nos vamos. Um, for everybody watching, my guest today is, and we didn't even get to the second part of what we were going to talk about. We've been
oh
talking about,
gosh.
um, we were talking to Madelynn Dorsey. We were talking about blending families and how to successfully do it. And I have to say that knowing her, um, she has definitely been able to do that. One of the things that I find the common thread in all your story is conversations. Like
Yes.
we had a conversation about where does that come from? How like, did you have a conversation about? Let's have a conversation about this.
Pretty, well, it comes from my parents because my parents, you know, I always saw them talking, talking, talking. And then too, my mom's very southern, and she can have her little taboo moments. But my dad was always like, "No, we need to have the hard conversations together." And I mean, sex, everything. You know what I'm saying? My dad, I had the sex conversation with my dad, not my mom, my dad. Like so. I and I am a daddy's girl. So growing up, I was like, that's, if I ever become a parent, that's a trait that I want to do, or I want to have, and also too, um, when you get after your kid, or you get in arguments, with your spouse, that you don't let it fester too long. You turn around, you're like, I'm sorry, I apologize for this, especially with your kids. Like if my dad got after us or spanked us, yes, I did get spanked with the belt. He would afterwards, we'd settle down and the face stopped getting red. And then he'd come in, he's like, I love you. I'm sorry I had to do that, but these are the reasons why. And you'll understand. There will be a point where you'll understand, and so that it has always carried over, whether, my relationships, friends, our children. I am very much about, we need to have an open, honest conversation. Because my dad was honest with me about things, honest about the not cool things in his life that he did, the sketchy things he did, the mistakes he made. And that made me respect him more because he wasn't trying to, pretend with me or make me think like, oh, I never made mistakes. No, he did. And this is what he had to learn from him. And so I really was conscious about that and made the effort that when I have children, I'm gonna be honest with them. And it's funny because like Anthony, my husband, not like that at all. Everything was, no. we don't say those things to your child. I'm like, well, no, you have to, because if your children don't trust you, if you're not honest with them, who else is going to be honest with them? Who else
Right.
is going to tell them the truth and let them know, like, hey, that you're human too, that you were once a kid and you made mistakes and you still continue to make mistakes,
Right.
and I think that's what's
And
I do love about our relationship and our life, and the way we handle that is that we
and
try to
coming
keep.
from a Latino family that had those taboos in place,
Yeah.
like that, and having to like, especially with like all the advocacy work that I do, in order to talk about HIV or anal cancer, you have to break that taboos of talking
Yeah,
about private things. So I totally agree with you. Like at some point, you have to talk about it, and
you have to.
you, otherwise, you just continue that thread. So
Right.
we've come to the part of the show where I ask my guest to share some words of wisdom with our audience. So, Madeline, what
Yeah,
words of wisdom do you have to
the
share?
pressure. um you know it's, we all try to be wise, in life, but the biggest thing that I could say, and I hope that you can take away from this, is, it might sound cliche and repetitive, but it's just communicating and being honest. Just when you communicate, let the communication come from your heart, and just be willing to share. Be willing to share. Be willing to be open, and with your spouse, with your children, and most importantly, allow yourself to have those mistakes. That, crap, I shouldn't have said that, and learn from that. But then too, when you've made those mistakes, also let your kids know, hey, I approached this wrong, and I am sorry. I'm sorry if I said this for this reason, and I think that's what's been the best thing about us, is that you know we we definitely let our kids know, hey, I messed up in saying that, and I'm human too. But and keeping them engaged, and respecting what they have to say too, really listening to them too, you know
I think that it also, as children of Latinos, I think it also it helps us to avoid that false sense of perfectionism that we
Yeah.
have to live up to as kids. Because I
Mhm.
know I did it for many years. I
Mhm.
tried to live up to the standards that my parents had,
Yeah.
and then once I got older and was able to be friends with my mom, that she was like, I know. I never did everything I told you to do. I was like, well, come on. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, you
Yeah.
waited 30 years to tell me that you're flawed? Like, how
Right.
dare you? But I think it does give, like, I mean, I don't have kids, but at least my friends' kids that I talk to and I get to give them some kind of words of wisdom in my own, I let them
Yeah.
know, I'm like, look, like, I messed up in my life, but
Yeah.
you can turn it around and look where I am now. So
Yeah.
you're gonna mess up. Just
Hmm.
don't live in the mistake.
Right.
Grow from it. Learn from it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's the thing. Like, my kids know that I am not perfect, and I have told them, like, hey, I made this mistake. I did this, da, da, da. And so they're like, oh, cool. And it's funny too. As they got older, and their friends would come over and stuff, and they're like, dude, your parents, they talk to you guys like that? Da, da, da. Like, they say those things to you, or you know that about your parents, and they're like, yeah, 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 I know my mom did these things. Da, 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 da,
She's
da.
the cool mom.
No, I don't want to be the cool. I mean, I want to be cool, but I want to still be like, hey, there's rules, and we're gonna follow them. We're gonna have
It,
fun, but we're gonna follow. You're in my house, following rules still.
it just reminded me of the mom in Mean Girls. Like I'm the cool mom.
I'm the cool one.
Before we go, I want to remind everybody if you watch us regularly, you know that show's coming up every Wednesday. Check us out at Christian Danny Show. Every Fridays, the Cardivo, and on Saturdays we have this put it together show. Make sure you check us out at littlemexicanproductions.com. Hashtag Little Mexican Productions Inc. And you can watch us on all these channels: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Make sure that you're following us so you get all the new information. And don't forget on Mondays, we have our horoscopes. So on any channel you're watching, including Instagram and TikTok, go check out those. Um, Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been wanting to have you on here forever.
Mm.
And for those of you that wondered about the intro, yes, I can attest to the salsa and pickles thing, which I'm going to tell you people. Now that we're done with the serious part, I'm going to tell you that. So I'm gonna brag. I make a really good salsa. I make a pretty good salsa.
Oh, yes.
It's nationally renowned salsa, which is right there.
Yes, my hair's standing up already. I want it so bad.
So every time that Madeline comes to visit, there is a fresh bowl of salsa and a jar of pickles because I remember one of the times that she came over, and this was after cancer. I had made salsa because she liked the salsa and chips and pickle. And she was sitting in my, I don't know what I was doing, but I looked over and she's having chips and salsa because I make really hot salsa. And she's taking a bite of the pickle, and I'm like, what is she doing? How do they? Is this how they do it in NorCal? Like we don't do that in Southern California anymore. Um, until she left one day, and I was like, let me see what this is about. So I grabbed a pickle, and I grabbed my salsa again because they're really hot. But let me tell you, okay, for those of you that don't know, if you eat salsa and it's really really hot, people drink milk. But if you're in a restaurant, put some salt in your and lick it. It'll cut down the heat.
Yeah.
That's what the pickle does.
Yes, I'm telling you. And then it just adds that extra vinegar flavor. I mean, it's don't knock it till you try it, folks. If
Just
you have
saying.
salsa today or tomorrow, go buy yourself a little dill pickle. Try it. Don't knock it till you try it.
So staples in my refrigerator now is a jar of pickles because I ordered them. I ordered them for her, but then sometimes I finish them. And I even went on Amazon and got a special pickle poker.
Oh, yeah, that was
You have to
genius. I
be
love
fancy
it. I
now
think
because it's
it's so
almost.
cool.
But I want to just, on a personal note, just tell you that I've known her now over
Forever.
15 years. That I remember about 15 years. Uh, but you have been such a blessing in my life, such a great friend.
Thank you.
I've had the pleasure of meeting all the people that we talked about today, including her parents. In fact, we spent the Thanksgiving at her parents' house one year in Texas. We were basically we were homeless, but we were homeless for Thanksgiving. We had a hotel room, and they invited us to their house for Thanksgiving, which is one of the sweetest things ever. But Madeline is an amazing friend. I've seen her kids grow and the way they parent, uh, both her and her husband, and the kids are wonderful. And her daughter is
Thank
just,
you.
I adore her. I would never tell her in her face because we love the war that we have. But congratulations. And we didn't even get to talk about some of the health issues. So you're going to have
Yeah,
to come back on the show and talk about
I know.
health.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was fun. I'm glad that I have some interest to people. But like I have been wanting to do this as well with you. I know we have these kind of candid conversations every time we see each other and laugh uncontrollably. So thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it, and
My pleasure.
hopefully I brought a little extra something to
Well,
it.
I'm sure there's somebody out there watching that is either starting their blended family or are already there, and they could
Right.
use some of these tips and go, "Oh, I did not think about that." So I
Yeah.
hope it made you think a little bit. For now, thank you everybody for watching. Madeline, don't go anywhere. Let me
Okay.
just say goodbye. I will talk to you guys. Remember, watch us on Wednesdays, Christian and Daniel, and Mondays is the horoscopes. Until then, we're together.